Men over 60. I'm about to talk about something most people won't say out loud, and yet it could be the silent reason your energy, confidence, and intimacy have faded over the years. You may think it's just age, but what if it's actually how you've been practicing self-pleasure? For over 2 decades, I've worked with senior men who thought their challenges in the bedroom were inevitable. Many of them still had the desire, but their bodies, and more importantly, their minds, weren't responding the same way. Some felt weaker, some noticed a dullness in sensation, and others lost their spark completely. And what's interesting? In many cases, the cause wasn't illness, medication, or even age. It was the way they were stimulating themselves privately, often in patterns they'd repeated for decades without ever questioning. Here's the truth. Masturbation is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool. Like any tool, used the right way, it can help you stay connected, confident, and even improve your health. But used without awareness, it can quietly strain your heart, disrupt your hormones, rewire your brain's reward system, and even change how you connect with a partner. And the danger is, most men never realize it's happening until they've already lost the vitality they once had. Why this matters now? At this stage of life, your body's chemistry, recovery speed, and neurological responses are all different than they were at 30 or 40. That means what once felt harmless can have a much bigger impact now. I've seen men who could still work hard on a farm, fix their own roof, or walk miles without a problem, but felt completely defeated by what happened in the privacy of their bedroom. If that sounds like you, or you've noticed a subtle decline you can't explain, what I'm about to share could give you back a sense of control. Take Robert, a retired engineer in his late 60s. Sharp mind, active lifestyle, the kind of guy who could build a bookshelf from scratch without even looking at a plan. But lately, he'd been waking up feeling as if his batteries had been stolen overnight. He wasn't ill, he wasn't overworked, and his diet hadn't changed. But he did have one habit, a private routine he'd never really considered dangerous. What he didn't know was that for a man his age, frequent solo release could subtly keep his body in a stress response state. It's not about morality, it's biology. Each time his cortisol spiked, forcing his system to work overtime to calm down. Over weeks and months, that constant drain was leaving him weaker, less motivated, and emotionally flat. Risk number 1: the silent drain. Most men over 60 don't think of masturbation as something that could drain their energy in a measurable way. They might joke about it, shrug it off, or treat it as a harmless habit, a way to relax before bed or pass the time when they're alone. But here's the truth. Your body doesn't see it as casual. Every sexual release triggers a very specific set of biological events, a surge of dopamine, a spike in heart rate, and most importantly for this risk, an increase in cortisol, the stress hormone. Why cortisol matters more after 60? At 25, your body can handle cortisol spikes like a champ. It can clear that stress hormone quickly, return to balance, and get on with the day. But after 60, your clearance rate slows down, meaning cortisol hangs around longer, keeping your body in a low-level fight or flight mode. That's like leaving your car engine idling all night. It may still run in the morning, but it's wasted fuel and added wear. Over time, this constant drain can lower your daily energy, slow your metabolism, and make you feel emotionally flat or unmotivated. Interfere with your body's nighttime repair cycles. The morning after effect. Some men notice it right away. They wake up sluggish with heavy limbs or a foggy head. Others feel it more subtly, less interest in hobbies, slower reaction times, and an overall sense that something's off. It's not that one night of self-pleasure will ruin your health, it's the pattern over weeks and months that quietly chips away at your reserves. A real-life example. Harold, 68, didn't believe this at first. He was active, walking daily, eating well, but he complained that no matter how much he slept, he felt like he'd been running a marathon in his dreams. When we tracked his habits, it turned out he had a near daily solo routine before bed, something he thought actually helped him sleep. The fix wasn't to stop completely, but to reduce frequency and change timing. Instead of a nightly ritual, he tried every third night and earlier in the evening. Within 2 weeks, he noticed his mornings were lighter, his mood steadier, and his walks felt easier. Why this risk is silent? Unlike knee pain or shortness of breath, there's no loud alarm bell telling you your energy is being stolen. It's slow, it's subtle, and because the activity is private, most men don't talk about it, which means they rarely connect the dots. My takeaway for you: if you've been feeling like your energy just isn't there anymore and your doctor can't find a clear reason, it's worth looking at your habits. Not to judge them, but to understand them. Sometimes the smallest shift, a little less frequency, a little more awareness, can free up a surprising amount of vitality. Risk number 2, the fatigue cycle. One of the most frustrating things about getting older is realizing your battery doesn't recharge as fast as it used to. You might still feel strong and capable most days, but when fatigue hits, it tends to stick around longer. And here's what many men over 60 don't realize. Certain private habits can quietly feed a loop of tiredness that keeps you stuck. How the cycle starts. It usually begins innocently. You feel bored, restless, or a little stressed. You decide to take the edge off with some solo time. For a few minutes, it works. You feel lighter, more relaxed. But afterwards, your body shifts into recovery mode. Your nervous system and muscles have just gone through a brief, intense event. Heart rate spike, hormone release, muscle contractions. And now they need to reset. At 30, that reset might take an hour. At 65 or 70, it could linger for most of the day or night. And if this happens frequently, the recovery time starts to stack on itself. From tiredness to inactivity. Once fatigue sets in, you're less likely to move. You skip the walk, put off that home project, or stay in your chair longer. Less movement means your muscles aren't being stimulated, which gradually reduces their strength and endurance. With weaker muscles, even small tasks feel heavier, which makes you even less likely to be active, and the cycle deepens. Why this matters for circulation and vitality. Physical activity isn't just about keeping muscles toned. It's one of the most powerful drivers of healthy blood flow, heart function, and even brain clarity. When you slip into a fatigue cycle, you lose out on all those benefits. Over weeks and months, your stamina, balance, and confidence can drop without you realizing how much your private habits contributed to it. A story from my practice. Samuel, 72, came to me convinced he was just getting old. He'd gone from golfing twice a week to sitting most days, feeling too tired to even walk to the store. When we reviewed his lifestyle, I noticed he had fallen into a pattern: late-night solo sessions, followed by late mornings and sluggish afternoons. We experimented with shifting his routine, reducing frequency, moving it to earlier in the day, and pairing it with light activity afterward. 3 weeks later, Samuel wasn't just walking more. He was back on the golf course once a week, smiling like he'd found a part of himself he thought was gone forever. My takeaway for you. If you've been feeling like your days are shrinking, less movement, less energy, fewer outings, it might not be just aging. It could be that a simple habit is stealing your momentum before you even start the day. Changing the timing, spacing out frequency, and keeping your body moving afterwards can break the fatigue cycle and give you back more active hours each week. Risk number 3, dopamine desensitization. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that's only part of the story. In truth, dopamine is more like your brain's motivation fuel. It's what pushes you to get up, start a project, meet with friends, or try something new. And here's the catch. When dopamine spikes too often, your brain begins to adjust. It dials down sensitivity to keep things balanced. This means you need more stimulation to feel the same level of pleasure or excitement you used to get naturally. How solo habits play into this? Every time you engage in sexual activity, whether with a partner or solo, your brain gets a hit of dopamine. That's normal, healthy, and part of human biology. But here's where it gets tricky. When solo activity becomes frequent, repetitive, and especially when it's paired with intense fantasy or fast-focused stimulation, the dopamine spikes are short but sharp. Do that often enough, and your brain essentially says, if we're getting this much dopamine this often, we need to turn down the sensitivity so we're not overloaded. The result? The same activity doesn't feel as exciting anymore, and worse, other activities you once enjoyed start feeling flat. The ripple effect. Dopamine desensitization isn't just about sexual pleasure. It can spill over into less excitement for hobbies, reduced motivation to exercise, a general meh feeling toward life's small joys, needing more extreme stimulation to feel engaged. A story to illustrate. Colin, 65, was a hobby photographer. He loved capturing sunsets, birds, and the occasional family gathering. But he noticed something odd. Even the most beautiful shots didn't excite him like before. He also admitted that over the last few years, his solo sessions had become more frequent and efficient. In his words, straight to the finish. When we talked about dopamine, it clicked for him. His brain had become so accustomed to these quick, intense spikes that slower, subtler pleasures barely registered. We made small changes, reduced frequency, slowed the pace during solo time, and added more novelty into his daily routine, like new walking routes and photography subjects. Within 2 months, Colin's spark for photography returned, and so did a sense of overall enthusiasm for life. Why this matters at your age? After 60, you're already working with a natural decline in dopamine production. If you add dopamine desensitization on top of that, you risk sliding into a low motivation state that's harder to climb out of. By moderating intensity and frequency and giving your brain a chance to enjoy slower, more sustained dopamine releases, you can keep your pleasure system responsive for much longer. Risk number 4, pleasure narrowing and social withdrawal. One of the most overlooked effects of frequent, repetitive solo stimulation is how it can narrow the range of pleasures your brain responds to. It's like training your taste buds to only enjoy one specific flavor. Over time, other flavors seem dull, even if they're objectively good. How pleasure narrowing happens. When your brain learns to expect pleasure in a very specific way, same type of touch, same pace, same fantasy, it starts building a preference around it. This is basic neuroplasticity. The brain strengthens the pathways it uses most often. The downside? Other forms of pleasure, whether that's partner intimacy, social interaction, hobbies, or even simple life moments, might not feel as satisfying because they don't match that trained pattern. From narrowed pleasure to isolation. This is where social withdrawal can creep in. If the things that used to light you up, like a night out with friends, a good conversation, or shared intimacy, no longer give you the same high, you might subconsciously start avoiding them. Not because you dislike people, but because your brain's pleasure system isn't firing the way it should in those settings. This isolation can lead to loneliness, lower mood, and even in some cases, mild depression, which all further reduce motivation and connection. A story that brings it to life. Dennis, 69, was known in his community as the social guy. He organized card nights, helped neighbors fix things, and loved telling stories over coffee. But over a few years, he found himself declining more invitations, saying he was just tired. When we dug deeper, we found a pattern. His private time had become his primary source of pleasure. It was reliable, predictable, and, in his mind, less effort than socializing. But it also meant his social muscles were shrinking, and with them, his emotional resilience. We worked on breaking the routine, reintroducing variety, and making small social commitments again. It wasn't overnight, but within months, Dennis was back to hosting his card nights. And he told me, "I didn't realize how much I missed this until I felt it again." Why this risk is especially important after 60. Social connection is one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging. It protects against cognitive decline, boosts mood, and even supports heart health. Anything that narrows your pleasure range and pushes you toward isolation is worth addressing, not out of guilt, but to protect your long-term vitality. My takeaway for you: if you've noticed yourself pulling back from friends, hobbies, or partner intimacy without a clear reason, it might be worth asking, have I been relying too much on one type of pleasure at the expense of others? The good news? Your brain can retrain itself at any age by adding variety, slowing down, and intentionally engaging in other rewarding activities. Risk number 5, heart strain and cardiovascular stress. We don't usually think of sexual activity, especially solo activity, as something that could challenge the heart. After all, it's not a marathon and it doesn't last very long. But here's what's often overlooked. The cardiovascular spike during sexual release can be as intense as moderate to heavy exercise, and for some men over 60, especially those with existing heart or circulation issues, that sudden demand can be risky. What happens to the heart during sexual activity? In the moments leading up to climax, your body's sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear. Heart rate accelerates, blood pressure rises, blood vessels constrict, then rapidly dilate. Oxygen demand in your heart muscle increases. If your cardiovascular system is healthy, it can usually handle this. But if you've got narrowing arteries, past heart trouble, or even undiagnosed circulation issues, that sudden surge can strain the system. Why this risk can be greater with solo activity? When you're with a partner, arousal often builds gradually, with breaks, changes of pace, and moments of relaxation. But during solo sessions, especially if they're quick or highly focused, you might go from 0 to peak much faster. That rapid climb puts more sudden pressure on the heart. A real-life cautionary tale. Frank, 71, had a history of mild hypertension but otherwise felt fine. One evening, during a particularly intense solo session, he suddenly felt short of breath and lightheaded. Thankfully, he was okay, but his doctor later explained that his blood pressure had likely spiked sharply and his heart had to work harder than usual to keep up. Frank made 2 changes. 1, slowing the pace, giving his body more time to adjust, and 2, choosing earlier in the day instead of right before bed when his blood pressure was naturally higher. Subtle signs to watch out for. If you notice any of these during or after sexual activity, it's worth bringing up with your doctor. Unusual shortness of breath, chest tightness or discomfort, dizziness or lightheadedness, heart palpitations. These don't always mean a serious problem, but they're signs your cardiovascular system might be under more strain than it should be. My takeaway for you: your heart is like the engine of a classic car, capable, but worth treating with care. By pacing yourself, avoiding overly sudden exertion, and keeping your doctor informed, you can continue enjoying your sexual health without putting unnecessary strain on your cardiovascular system. Risk number 6, over-reliance on self-pleasure for stress relief. Stress is a part of life, whether it's bills, health concerns, family challenges, or just the everyday noise of the world. And for many men, sexual release has been a go-to way to unwind for decades. It's quick, private, and offers an immediate hit of relaxation. The problem? When it becomes the only stress management tool you use, you start to create an emotional bottleneck. Why over-reliance can backfire? Here's the pattern I've seen in countless men over 60. 1. Something stressful happens, maybe a disagreement with a spouse, a tough phone call, or financial worry. Instead of working through the feelings or addressing the root cause, they go straight to the one thing that gives instant relief. They feel better for a little while, but the original stressor remains. Over time, the brain starts linking stress only with that form of escape. This can lead to two problems: mental fog, because the stress isn't being fully resolved, it lingers in the background, quietly taxing your focus and mood. And emotional inflexibility. Your ability to cope with stress in different ways gets weaker, making you more dependent on this single outlet. The toolbox analogy. Think of your stress management skills like a toolbox. If you only have one tool, say a hammer, you'll try to use it for every problem, even if the job really calls for a screwdriver or a wrench. Eventually, the hammer wears down, and you're left with fewer options and more frustration. A real story from my practice. James, 66, was caring for his wife through a long illness. He admitted that after particularly stressful days, his first instinct was to retreat to the bedroom for a few minutes alone. He wasn't ashamed of it, but he noticed that the relief never lasted. Soon, he was doing it more often, sometimes multiple times a day, just to keep the stress at bay. When we added other tools to his stress toolbox, short walks, guided breathing exercises, calling a friend, he found that he didn't need to rely on solo activity nearly as much. His mind felt clearer, and he began sleeping more deeply. Healthy alternatives that work well for men over 60. Gentle movement. A 10-minute walk can lower stress hormones and improve mood almost immediately. Breath work. Slow, deep breathing, inhale for 4, exhale for 6, can trigger your body's natural relaxation response. Social contact. Even a short positive conversation can release oxytocin, a calming, connecting hormone. Mindful hobbies. Gardening, woodworking, or even light puzzles can provide steady dopamine without the sharp spikes. My takeaway for you: self-pleasure can absolutely be part of a healthy, balanced life, even after 60. But when it's your only way to handle stress, you risk creating a dependency that leaves you less resilient when life throws challenges your way. By adding more tools to your coping kit, you can enjoy your sexuality and strengthen your ability to handle whatever comes your way. So, we've walked through 6 very real yet often invisible risks of frequent, unbalanced solo activity after 60. 1. The silent drain. Subtle energy loss from lingering stress hormones. 2. The fatigue cycle. Tiredness feeding inactivity, which weakens your body over time. 3. Dopamine desensitization. Your brain's pleasure system becoming less responsive. 4. Pleasure narrowing and social withdrawal. Life's joys shrinking to a single source. 5. Heart strain and cardiovascular stress. Sudden spikes that can challenge a mature heart. 6. Over-reliance for stress relief. Losing flexibility in how you handle life's challenges. Each of these risks doesn't just touch your sexual health. They ripple through your energy, your mood, your relationships, and even your long-term independence. The bigger picture. Your sexual health after 60 isn't just about function. It's about freedom. Freedom to wake up with energy. Freedom to enjoy hobbies without fatigue. freedom to connect deeply with loved ones, and freedom to live without fear that something private is quietly holding you back. The truth is, self-pleasure can still be a positive, life-enhancing part of your routine if it's balanced, intentional, and supported by other healthy habits. Your action plan. Here's how you can start today. Check your frequency. Aim for quality over quantity, with recovery days in between. Change the timing. Try earlier in the day to protect sleep and morning energy. Add variety. Explore new hobbies, social activities, and different forms of intimacy. Support your body. Regular movement, nourishing foods, and hydration. Strengthen your mind. Breathing exercises, mindfulness, and talking openly with your doctor. A word from the heart. You've lived through decades of change, challenge, and growth. Your body has carried you here, and it deserves care, respect, and balance, especially now. Every small choice you make can either drain or fuel your vitality, and it's never too late to shift toward the choices that give you more life. If this message resonated with you, if you saw yourself in any of these risks or felt a spark of motivation, don't just click away and forget. Take one simple step today. It could be as small as going for a walk instead of a quick escape, or calling an old friend instead of scrolling alone. And if you want more clear, compassionate guidance on senior men's health, subscribe to Men's Vital Health, Wellness Wisdom. Like this video, share it with a friend who might need to hear it, and let's keep building a community where men can talk openly, live energetically, and age with confidence. Because your best years aren't behind you, they're the ones you create from this moment forward.